Grace first met Daniel at the university library. She was a shy girl who loved books and quiet moments. Daniel was the opposite, confident, ambitious, and full of dreams. But somehow, they clicked. What started as casual talks about assignments turned into long walks, shared laughter, and late-night phone calls. Welcome to Sarah Wood's Tale, where stories comes alive. Please do well to hit that subscription button and turn on your notification bell for subsequent stories. I like the way you think, Grace, Daniel once told her during one of their walks across the school lawn. You make me feel calm. Like the world isn't too loud when I'm with you. Grace smiled, blushing. And you make me feel seen. Their love grew with time. Daniel graduated top of his class and started building a small tech company. Grace supported him all the way, helping him build his website, packing his lunch, and staying up late with him when he worked overnight. They got married 2 years after graduation. The wedding was simple but beautiful. Everyone could see the love in Daniel's eyes when Grace walked down the aisle in her white dress. She was glowing. He whispered to her at the altar, "You'll always be my dream girl." Their first few years of marriage were filled with joy. Grace became pregnant with their first child, and even though the pregnancy was tough, Daniel was supportive at first. "You're carrying our future," he said, kissing her belly one night. "You're beautiful, Grace." But after the baby was born, things slowly began to change. After childbirth, Grace's body changed. She put on weight that she struggled to lose. Between sleepless nights, breastfeeding, and caring for their son, she barely had time for herself. Daniel's compliments became fewer. He started spending more time at work. At first, she thought it was just the pressure of the business growing. "Are you okay?" Grace asked him one evening as she served him dinner. "You seem stressed." Daniel barely looked up from his phone. "I'm fine. Just work stuff." Grace nodded, trying to smile. "I made your favorite, pepper chicken." He muttered. "Thanks." He barely touched the food. The next day, Grace stood in front of the mirror, looking at herself. She could see the tiredness under her eyes, the stretch marks on her belly, and the roundness of her arms. Tears filled her eyes. She tried everything, walking in the mornings, cutting down on food, drinking detox teas she saw on social media. But the weight didn't go quickly, and the stress of motherhood made it even harder. Still, she didn't give up on trying to make her marriage work. She planned a surprise date night for Daniel's birthday. She wore a black dress that hugged her curves, did her makeup, and even lit candles. When Daniel came home, he looked surprised. "What's all this?" he asked. "Happy birthday, my love," Grace said, smiling. "I thought we could have dinner together, just us." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. Then he shrugged. "I already ate. We had a lunch celebration at work." Grace's smile faded. "Oh, you didn't tell me." "It was last minute," he replied, loosening his tie and walking past her. "I'm tired. I'm going to shower." Grace stood there, the candles flickering as her heart dimmed. As months passed, Daniel's distance grew. He stopped talking to Grace unless it was about the baby or the house. He didn't touch her anymore. No hugs. No kisses. No smiles. Grace finally asked one night, "Daniel, what's happening to us?" Daniel didn't look up from his laptop. "Nothing's happening." "Yes, something is. You barely talk to me. You don't even look at me anymore." Daniel sighed heavily. "Grace, can we not do this now?" "No. We need to. I miss you. I miss us." He shut the laptop. "You miss us? Then maybe try looking like the woman I married." The words cut through Grace like a knife. "What?" she whispered. "You heard me," Daniel snapped. "Look at yourself, Grace. You've let yourself go. You used to be attractive. Now you just don't care anymore." "I gave birth to our child," she said, tears already falling. "I've been trying." "Trying," he scoffed. "You sit at home all day. You used to take care of yourself." Grace's voice shook. "I take care of our son, Daniel. I've been trying to lose weight. I've tried everything." "Well, it's not enough," he shouted. "I don't feel anything when I look at you anymore." That night, Grace cried harder than she had ever cried before. She lay in bed, holding a pillow to her chest, wondering what had happened to the man who once called her his dream girl. The final straw came at Daniel's corporate party. Grace still decided to go, despite feeling nervous about her appearance. She wore a wine-red gown that took her an hour to pick. She even got her hair done and bought new heels. When they arrived at the event, Everyone looked perfect. Slim women in designer dresses, men in sharp suits. Grace felt out of place but tried to smile. Daniel quickly disappeared into the crowd. She stood by the bar, holding a glass of juice, scanning the room for her husband. That's when she saw him, laughing, with his arm around Monica, his slim, pretty secretary. Monica leaned into him, whispering something into his ear. He laughed loudly. Grace walked over slowly. "Daniel," she said softly. He looked at her, slightly annoyed. "Oh, Grace. You okay?" "Yes. I was just looking for you." Monica gave her a fake smile. "Hi, Grace. You look comfortable." Grace blinked. "Thanks." Daniel cleared his throat. "Can you give me a moment, Monica?" Monica smirked and walked away, but not before giving Daniel a playful touch on the arm. Grace looked at him. "What was that?" "What was what?" Daniel asked. "You were flirting with her. In front of everyone." Daniel rolled his eyes. "Don't start." "Start what, Daniel? I've stood here alone for an hour while you—" "Grace," he cut her off, his voice cold. "This isn't the place." "But when is the place, Daniel? You never talk to me anymore." People were starting to look. He leaned in and hissed, "Lower your voice." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Why are you doing this?" Daniel gave a half laugh. "Doing what? Being honest." "Honest?" "Yes," he said, stepping back. "You've changed, Grace. And not in a good way. I'm not attracted to you anymore. I can't pretend. You're my husband." "I was," he said, almost under his breath. Grace froze. "What do you mean?" Daniel looked away. "I've already filed for divorce. You'll get the papers next week." Her heart stopped. "You, what?" "I didn't want to do it here, but you forced it. I can't do this anymore, Grace. I'm tired of pretending to be happy." He walked away, leaving her standing there in a crowded room with tears streaming down her face. That night, Grace sat in the car alone, still dressed in the red gown, staring at her reflection in the side mirror. "I'm not enough," she whispered. But deep inside her, something else stirred, quiet, but fierce. It wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. Grace didn't get out of bed. Sunlight poured into the room, but it felt dark inside her heart. Her pillow was wet from crying all night. The only sound was her baby's gentle cooing from the crib beside her. She turned over slowly, staring at the ceiling. Her heart felt heavy, like a stone sitting inside her chest. Daniel had left the house early, like always. No goodbye. No explanation. Just silence. Later that day, a delivery man arrived with a white envelope. The divorce papers. Grace sank to the floor, holding the envelope like it was a piece of glass. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Her name was written in bold letters. A cold letter from a man who once called her his world. She sat on the kitchen floor and cried until her voice went hoarse. Days passed. Grace barely ate. Her face grew pale, her eyes sunken. She didn't answer phone calls or messages. Her baby, Liam, was the only reason she moved at all. One afternoon, her childhood friend, Clara, came knocking. "Grace, open the door." Clara shouted, knocking harder. Grace didn't answer. She was sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, staring blankly at the TV. Clara, stubborn as always, used the spare key Daniel had given her long ago. When she stepped in, she gasped. "Oh my God, Grace. What happened to you?" Grace didn't move. Her eyes slowly filled with tears. "He left me, Clara," she whispered. "He said I wasn't good enough." Clara rushed over and hugged her tightly. "You are more than enough," Clara said, stroking her hair. "He's the one who's blind." "I'm fat, Clara. I'm ugly. I let myself go. Maybe it's my fault." No, Grace. You carried a child, you gave him your whole heart, and he threw it away. That's not your fault." Grace finally broke down in Clara's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. That weekend, Clara helped her pack some essentials. "You're coming with me," Clara said. "You need a break. A new space." Grace hesitated. "But the house, Liam. You can figure that out later. Right now, you need healing." Clara lived in a small but cozy apartment on the quieter side of the city. It had soft yellow curtains, warm lighting, and the smell of lavender always in the air. For the first time in weeks, Grace slept peacefully. Each day, Clara encouraged her to get up. "Just a short walk today. 10 minutes. "I don't want to be seen," Grace mumbled. "Not for them. For you. So Grace walked. Just 10 minutes at first. Then 15. Then 30. They cooked meals together. Healthy, fresh meals. Clara introduced her to journaling. Write down everything. The pain. The memories. The anger. Let it out. So Grace wrote. He used to say I was his dream. Now he acts like I'm a nightmare. I gave him my all. How did I become not enough? She cried after each entry, but every tear felt like poison leaving her soul. Some days were hard. She'd stand in front of the mirror and whisper, I hate my body. But Clara would remind her, your body is not your enemy. It's your home. It carried life. It carried you. Slowly, Grace began to change, not just her body, but her mind. She read books about self-love. She listened to motivational podcasts. She joined a small online support group for women who had experienced similar rejection. In that group, she met dozens of women who had been through the same thing: abandonment, shame, silence. They shared their stories. Grace began sharing hers too. And piece by piece, she started to heal. Exactly 1 year later, Grace stood in front of the mirror and smiled. Her face had changed. Her eyes had life in them again. Her skin glowed. Her curves were firm, her shoulders stood tall, and her heart felt strong. She had lost weight, yes, but that wasn't the biggest transformation. She had found herself. No longer broken, no longer hiding. Clara walked in and gasped. Wow, look at you, Grace. Grace turned, laughing. It's been a journey. I'm so proud of you, Clara said, hugging her. Now tell me about that idea you've been working on. Grace's eyes lit up. I want to start something for women like me, she said. Something real. Not just about weight loss, but about healing. About loving yourself, no matter your size. Clara smiled. I love it. What's it called? Grace's Glow, she said, beaming. They spent days building the brand, taking pictures, creating posts, designing a simple website. Grace started recording videos where she spoke from the heart. In her first video, she sat on her couch, looking straight into the camera. My name is Grace. A year ago, my husband left me because I was fat. He said I wasn't beautiful anymore. He made me feel worthless. But today, I found my worth. Not because I lost weight, but because I learned to love myself again. This is for every woman who has ever felt invisible. You matter. You are enough. And you are glowing, even if you don't see it yet. The video blew up. Thousands of comments poured in. This made me cry. Thank you. Your story is my story. #Grace's Glow needs to be everywhere. People started using the hashtag to share their own transformations, not just physical, but emotional. Grace began hosting live sessions where she talked about confidence, motherhood, rejection, healing, and food freedom. She brought on fitness coaches who didn't promote starvation, but strength. She invited therapists to speak on self-worth. Within months, Grace's Glow became more than a brand. It became a movement. She got invited to speak at wellness events. Her story was shared on blogs and even TV. A major lifestyle magazine featured her under the headline, The Woman Who Turned Her Pain into Power. Clara sat beside her during a radio interview one day. How does it feel, Grace? The host asked. To go from broken to bold. Grace smiled. It feels like freedom. For the first time in my life, I'm living for me. One day, as she was going through her inbox, Grace found a message from a man named Ethan. It read, Hi Grace, I saw your video, and I just wanted to say thank you. I lost my wife to depression 2 years ago, and your words helped me understand what she might have been feeling. If you ever want to collaborate or talk, I run a mental health nonprofit. I think we could do something great together. Grace read it twice. There was no flirtation, no pressure, just sincerity. She looked out the window, the afternoon sun kissing her skin, and whispered, maybe this is just the beginning. Daniel sat at his large office desk, staring at the numbers on his laptop screen. His fingers tapped nervously on the wood as he read the report again. Red. Everything was in the red. Sales were down. Investors were pulling out. His once booming tech company was bleeding money fast. How did this happen? He muttered. His assistant, Jacob, knocked gently and stepped in. Sir, Monica wants to speak with you. Daniel nodded. Send her in. Monica walked in wearing her usual sleek dress and heels. But today, her face was cold. I heard about the investor deal falling through, she said, arms crossed. It's temporary, Daniel replied. trying to sound confident. I just need a few months to get things back on track. Monica didn't smile. You said that 3 months ago. This place is going down, Daniel. He stood up. We've been through worse. I'm not staying for worse, she interrupted. I've got offers. Real ones. I'm leaving. Daniel's face fell. Wait, Monica, don't do this. We've built something here. Us. You said you cared about me. She laughed lightly, bitterly. I cared when you had money, power, style. Now, you're just lost and desperate. Then she walked out. Daniel sat down heavily, the silence of the office pressing in on him. Later that night, alone in his apartment, now half empty after selling most of his furniture, Daniel turned on the TV. He flipped through channels without watching, his mind racing. Then he paused. There she was. Grace. She was standing on a stage, wearing a beautiful green jumpsuit. Her skin glowed under the lights. Her smile was confident. The banner behind her read, Grace's Glow, loving yourself loudly. A reporter spoke. From rejection to rebirth, Grace has become a national symbol of strength and self-love. Her message has gone viral. Daniel dropped the remote. He stared at the screen as Grace spoke to a cheering crowd. You are not the size of your waistline. You are not the pain someone left you with. You are powerful, beautiful, and worthy of love. The audience clapped. Some people cried. Daniel's mouth went dry. That's Grace, he whispered. She changed. He sat forward, eyes locked on the screen. For the first time in a long time, he felt something sharp in his chest. Regret. Over the next few days, Daniel couldn't get her out of his head. He searched her name online. Videos, photos, interviews, all showing the new Grace. But it wasn't just her body that had changed. It was the way she stood, the way she spoke, the peace in her eyes. He messaged her on Facebook. Daniel, hey Grace. Long time. I saw your seminar. You look amazing. Can we talk? No reply. He tried emailing her. Subject, please talk to me. Hi Grace. I know I was wrong. I'm not proud of how I treated you. I miss you. I made a mistake. I'd love to see you and talk. Please. Still, no reply. He even tried calling her old number. Disconnected. Frustrated and desperate, he made a decision. I'm going to see her. I need to see her, in person. Grace stood backstage, holding a microphone in her hand. The seminar hall was packed with women from all walks of life. Young, old, slim, curvy, tall, short, all gathered to hear her speak. Clara leaned in and whispered, This crowd is huge. You ready? Grace smiled softly. I am. She stepped onto the stage as applause filled the room. Hello, beautiful souls, she greeted, her voice calm and warm. The energy in the room was full of hope. This journey didn't start with success, Grace began. It started with pain, rejection, shame. But pain isn't the end of our story. It's the soil where we grow. People nodded, some wiping tears. Grace continued sharing her story, how she fell, how she healed, how she rebuilt herself from the ground up. Then, in the middle of her speech, a disturbance stirred near the back of the hall. A man had walked in. Security stepped forward, but he raised his hands. I just need 5 minutes, he said. Grace's eyes met his. Daniel. She froze for a moment. The entire room watched as he walked slowly to the front, carrying a bouquet of roses. He reached the stage and got down on one knee. Grace, he said, his voice shaky. I've been a fool. I didn't see your worth when you stood by me. I let pride and pressure blind me. He looked up at her, eyes filled with regret. You were always beautiful. You were always enough. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Please, give me another chance. The room fell silent. Everyone waited for Grace's reply. She stepped forward, calm and composed. The microphone trembled slightly in her hand, but her voice did not. Daniel, she said gently, you don't love me. You loved an image. He blinked. What do you mean? You loved the idea of the perfect wife. The slim figure. The polished look. The woman who fit your success story. But when I changed, when I became real, you left. Gasps filled the room. Grace continued. You called me disgusting. You made me feel small. You humiliated me in front of strangers. And now that I've healed without you, you want to come back. Daniel's face paled. Grace took a breath and spoke into the mic. To everyone listening, don't ever go back to the people who walked away when you needed love most. You deserve someone who sees you in your worst and still says, "I'm staying." The audience erupted in applause. Women stood up, cheering, some with tears streaming down their faces. Daniel stood slowly, flowers still in his hand. He looked around, embarrassed. He turned and walked out, the same way he came in, quiet and empty. Clara came on stage and hugged Grace tightly. "You were perfect," she whispered. "So strong." Grace smiled. That was for every woman who thought she needed to shrink to be loved. She turned back to the audience. Today is not about the past. It's about the power of rising. Together, we glow. The sky was a warm gold as the sun dipped low over the city. Grace sat at a rooftop cafe, sipping her chamomile tea, her journal open beside her. It had become her favorite spot to reflect after speaking events. She had just wrapped another sold-out seminar, her largest one yet. As she flipped through her notes, a tall man in a navy suit approached her table. "Excuse me," he said politely. "Are you Grace Morgan?" She looked up and smiled. "Yes, I am. I'm Ethan Carter," he said, offering a hand. "I hope I'm not interrupting." She shook his hand. "Not at all. I've heard your name before. You run Elevate Minds, right?" Ethan nodded, surprised. "I do. And I've been following your journey for a while now." Grace raised a curious eyebrow. Ethan sat across from her after she gestured to the empty chair. "I watched your first Grace's Glow video when my sister shared it. My wife passed away a few years ago. She struggled with postpartum depression and body image. Your story, it reminded me of her. I wish she had someone like you to listen to back then." Grace's heart softened. "I'm sorry about your loss." "Thank you," Ethan said, his voice gentle. "I came here today not just as a fan, but with a proposal." Grace tilted her head. "A proposal?" He chuckled. "Business. For now." She laughed, feeling the tension ease between them. "I want to invest in Grace's Glow," Ethan continued. "Not to change your message, but to help you reach more people. We could build an app, create a wellness platform, and even launch community centers for women around the country." Grace blinked. "That's a big dream." "It is," he said. "But you've already laid the foundation. I just want to help you build it higher." She paused, thoughtful. "I've had offers before, but most of them wanted to water down the message. Turn it into just a weight loss campaign." Ethan leaned forward. "I don't want to shrink your voice. I want to amplify it." His sincerity was disarming. Grace looked into his kind eyes and saw no agenda, just purpose. She smiled. "All right, let's do it. Together." As they clinked coffee mugs to seal the deal, Clara watched from a nearby table and grinned to herself. Later that night, as Grace walked to her car, Ethan caught up with her. "Grace," he called. She turned. "Yes. One more thing," he said, his voice softer now. "This partnership, it's not just business for me." She froze. "I see you," Ethan said. "Not just the brand, not just the message, but you. And I hope, when the time is right, you'll let me show you what real love looks like." Grace's heart fluttered. She didn't answer with words, but her smile said enough. 1 week later, Grace's brand was booming. Her new podcast, Gracefully Rising, launched with thousands of listeners in the first 24 hours. Women across the world tuned in to hear her raw, honest talks on healing, growth, and self-love. She had just signed a deal with a major wellness brand, and her Grace's Glow app was in development with Ethan's tech team. Everything felt like it was finally coming together. But not everyone was happy. Daniel sat alone in his dimly lit apartment, watching her face flash across the screen. He felt like a ghost watching someone else's life, his life, that had moved on without him. He clenched his jaw and slammed his laptop shut. "She thinks she's too good for me now," he muttered. His phone vibrated. A message from an old intern read. "Hey, I still have some old footage from that year you guys broke up. Grace was crying in the office once. Remember? Want me to send it?" Daniel stayed at the message, conflicted, then typed, "Send it." Within minutes, Daniel had in his possession a few shaky clips and blurry photos of Grace crying in her car, leaving the office overweight and red-eyed, sitting alone on a bench with food in her lap. He uploaded them anonymously to a gossip blog and captioned them, "The truth behind Grace's Glow. This is the empowered woman you all worship." He thought it would ruin her. Instead, it made her rise higher. The photos went viral, but not in the way Daniel hoped. Grace received a call from Clara early that morning. "Grace, someone leaked those old photos of you." Grace sat up in bed, heart racing. What photos? Clara sent them to her phone. Grace stared in silence at the images. Overweight. Broken. Sobbing. For a moment, her breath caught in her throat. But then, she smiled. This was me, she whispered. That same day, she went live on Instagram with over 500,000 viewers. She held up the photo of her crying on the bench. This is real. This is the woman who was hurting, who had been rejected, who was judged for her size, her pain, her tears. She held up another photo. And this is the same woman who got back up, who chose to heal, who chose to rise. Her voice grew stronger. You can try to shame me with my past, but I'm not ashamed. That was the beginning of my glow. And if you've ever cried alone and felt like you weren't enough, then you are my sister. The comments section exploded with love. You're so brave. This made me cry. I needed this. Still glowing #gracefully rising. Ethan messaged her moments later. You just turned a knife into a crown. I'm in awe of you. By that evening, #gracefully rising was trending worldwide. Major brands reached out. A publishing house offered her a book deal. A top TV network requested an interview. Daniel, sitting in his apartment, saw the news headlines. Grace's past leaked, and she turned it into gold. He tossed his phone across the room. Meanwhile, Grace sat with her son, Liam, in her arms, reading him a bedtime story. As he drifted to sleep, she kissed his forehead and whispered, Mommy didn't just survive, she shined. Outside, her phone kept buzzing with messages and requests. But inside, Grace felt peace. Her past didn't define her. Her pain didn't break her. And no one, not even Daniel, could stop her now. Daniel sat on a torn couch in a tiny one-bedroom apartment. The ceiling leaked and the walls were cracked. The once proud entrepreneur who used to wear designer suits and drive a sleek black Mercedes now wore a faded t-shirt and slippers with holes. His fridge was empty. So was his phone. No calls, no messages. He stared blankly at the TV, which barely worked. Static buzzed on the screen. His bank account had just gone below zero. His last investor pulled out last week. His name was no longer on anyone's lips. He had become invisible. He hadn't shaved in days. He hadn't smiled in months. The worst part wasn't losing money. It was watching Grace glow on every screen, every billboard, every headline. She had become everything he never thought she could be. Everything he once said she'd never be. There was a knock on the door. Daniel groaned. Probably the landlord again. He opened the door slowly and froze. It was Grace. She looked beautiful in a long ivory coat, soft curls flowing over her shoulders, a gentle strength in her eyes. Grace. Daniel whispered, stunned. Hi, Daniel, she said calmly. He stepped back. Why are you here? I heard what happened, she said. I thought I should come. Daniel scratched his head, embarrassed. You came to see me like this. To laugh. She shook her head. No, not to laugh. Not to boast. Daniel turned away, ashamed. You shouldn't see me like this. This isn't who I was. Grace walked in anyway and looked around. The place was dark, messy, and cold. Daniel, she said quietly, this was never about money or fame. It was about how you treated people when you had power. He sank onto the couch. I know, he whispered. I was cruel to you. I hated who you became, but now I hate who I am. Grace sat in the only other chair. You broke me, Daniel. You really did. You called me disgusting. You embarrassed me. You made me feel worthless. Tears welled in his eyes. I was stupid. I didn't know what I had. She looked at him for a long moment, then said something he never expected to hear. I forgive you. He looked up, shocked. Not for you, she added, but for me, because I don't want to carry your poison any longer. She stood up. You see, I rebuilt myself without you. From nothing. From brokenness. And I did it with love, with truth, and with people who never gave up on me. Daniel nodded slowly, tears falling now. I wish I had been one of those people, he said. Grace looked at him gently. So do I. She turned to leave. He called after her. Grace. She stopped at the door. You're really happy now, aren't you? She smiled softly, a smile that held no pride, only peace. Yes, Daniel. I am. And then she walked out, closing the door behind her, this time, for good. The sky was bright, the sun warm as the wind gently swept across the garden. Rows of white flowers lined the aisle, and soft music played in the background. Guests sat in beautiful chairs, facing a floral archway covered in white roses and glowing lights. It was Grace's wedding day. Clara adjusted her veil. "You look like a dream." Grace smiled at her reflection in the mirror. She wore a simple but elegant white gown that hugged her curves perfectly. Her skin glowed, her eyes sparkled, and peace radiated from her. "I feel like I've waited my whole life for this kind of peace," Grace said softly. Clara squeezed her hand. "You deserve every second of it." Down at the altar, Ethan stood tall in a grey suit, holding Liam's hand. The little boy looked around with excitement. "Is Mommy coming now?" Liam asked. Ethan smiled. "Yes, buddy. She's coming." As the music changed and the guests stood, all eyes turned to the top of the aisle. Grace appeared, holding a bouquet of ivory and gold flowers. The crowd gasped softly. Her presence was magnetic. She walked slowly, each step full of purpose, strength, and grace. Unseen by most, far behind the guests, stood a man outside the fence, Daniel. He had shaved, worn a clean shirt, and found the courage to come, not to win her back, but to see what he lost. He watched as Grace walked past him without seeing him, her eyes focused on Ethan. He watched her laugh softly at something Liam whispered. He watched her take Ethan's hand. And as the vows began, Daniel's eyes filled with tears, not out of bitterness, but out of understanding. He had lost her, but she had found herself. On the altar, Grace took the microphone. She looked into Ethan's eyes. "I once thought love meant shrinking yourself to fit someone else's idea of perfect. I thought I had to earn love by changing who I was." Ethan listened, his eyes never leaving hers. "But now I know, real love celebrates you exactly as you are. Real love holds your hand when the world walks away. Real love stays." She turned slightly, addressing the guests. "For anyone who ever felt unloved, unwanted, unseen, know this: you are enough. Not when you lose weight, not when you gain success, but right now, as you are." The guests clapped, many wiping tears. Ethan took her hand and said his vows. "You taught me to believe in healing, in second chances. You're not just my partner, you're my home." Grace smiled, her eyes shining. As they exchanged rings, the sun broke through the clouds, bathing the garden in golden light. They kissed, and the crowd cheered. Daniel turned and walked away quietly, fading into the trees like a forgotten page. And Grace, she danced. She laughed. She held her son and her husband under the stars that night, because she knew, sometimes, the best revenge is loving yourself louder than they hated you. Please don't forget to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe to get more interesting stories like this.